melody, the words, you the chorus. You gladly laid your life down for us. For all the blessings that you bring, Lord of lords and King of kings, we will let our voices ring. You're the only song we ever want to sing. You're the only song I ever want to sing. You're the only song I ever want to sing. You're the only song, the only song. You're the only song I ever want to sing.
It is another edition of Christian Media Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the stories and testimonies behind your favorite personalities in Christian media. We have a great author with us. He is the author of the book, Jesus, Terrible Financial Advice. It is John Thornton here joining us. He is a certified public accountant and author with us. John, how are you today? Thanks for joining us via Skype.
Hey, doing great. Thanks so much, Joe, for having me.
Well, it's a privilege to have you on with us today. Now, for those, we have to start out with this because you're familiar with our area, our audience up here. We're based out of Washington. You are a professor now in Southern California, but you have experience up here not only in the Olympia area where we are headquartered, but also with collegiate as well, with the Washington State Cougars. Tell us a little bit about your Northwest history here.
Yeah, go Cougs. Of course, I'm not one of those Cougs who doesn't root for the Huskies. I actually root for them when they're not playing the Cougars.
There you go, I'm the same way.
I got a PhD up there in accounting way back in '96, but I've taught there for 15 years. Taught at the Air Force Academy for 4 years right after that time period when I finished up. But anyway, yeah. So by the way, Azusa Pacific University didn't even have to change mascots. We're Cougars here as well. So.
All right. Once a Cougar, always a Cougar, right? Is that how that works?
Oh, yeah. Also a Central Washington Wildcat, by the way, just for if you really get around, yeah.
There you go. Ellensburg, yep.
Yeah.
So tell us about the new book. You're a professor down there at Azusa Pacific here in Southern California, and also you're the author of a book, Jesus, Terrible Financial Advice. Tell us from a little bit about that book and how, from a Christian perspective, how people who are watching can get their financial house in order, so to speak.
Yeah, well, so one of the things, way back when I was a professor at the Air Force Academy, so I just finished my PhD at Washington State. I was out at the academy, and looking back over 6 years, we had given up probably about 80% of our income to go to graduate school. And when we got done and got through, we realized we didn't just survive, we thrived. And we'd made it, and we thought, hey, we'll tell people, follow what God's telling you to do, and He's going to take care of you. And that's the book I wanted to write. And I tell people I sat down to write a book on God's perspective on money. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. Unfortunately, I didn't say it. I was going to say, give a little, save a little, and God's got you, which He does. Practical advice, it's just, Jesus says much crazier things, like, give to everybody who asks you. And you got to think, really? Not him. Right? Or if somebody sues you for your shirt, give them your coat as well. And you got to think, hey, Jesus, you must not have grown up in America. It's our national pastime, right? We love to sue people. So where's he going with these things, right? So that's why the name of the book, really, I tell people, Jesus, his advice ruined the book. I plan on writing on his behalf. And so for the next, 15, 17 years, I struggled and really, passage after passage, okay, so great, maybe I figured that one out. Well, so what do you mean by this one? And so really, this is kind of my life's journey in a lot of ways, just looking at things, and people I talk to, because as a CPA, as an accounting professor, CPAs are kind of like financial priests. Everybody confesses to us, about their, So Jesus' ways, they work, but by the way, I chose that word. Last thing about this, the word terrible has a couple meanings. One is like exceedingly bad, and from a world's perspective, Jesus' advice does seem really bad. But we also get terrible, like awesome, like the terrible day of the Lord. And Jesus' advice, when we get His purpose, which I would strongly argue, Jesus' purpose, His sole purpose on coming to earth was to glorify His Father, to give us a true picture of who He really is. When we get Jesus' purpose right, all of a sudden that advice, it seems like it so much doesn't make sense, makes complete sense. Yeah, and so that's the impetus behind the title. Yeah.
No, I thought it was creative. It's great hearing the story behind the name there. No, I think it's absolutely fantastically wonderful. I've seen many times in my own life and in our ministry, especially where Jesus' mass sometimes logically to the normal human being may not make sense. But in the end, if you do what he tells you to do and you follow his principles, you are blessed beyond belief. You don't know who you could be helping out or whose life you can be making a difference in, and how when you take care of his business, he takes care of yours in return, and he looks out for you every single time. And I found that to be true, and it's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
How have you incorporated some of those? Now, you're a professor as well. How have you incorporated some of these lessons and some of these teachings in just your daily teaching and professorial work?
Yeah, great question. Again, Jesus talks, the Bible says so much about wealth that you can kind of pick and choose and grab your favorite verse and go that direction, right? There's 1,300 passages on wealth in the Bible. Well, what I tried to do in this book is not just grab one thing that Jesus says and run with that. I mean, let me take, for example, prosperity theology versus the group I call poverty and piety theology, right?
Yeah.
These are two groups of Christians who apparently read the same Bible, seeing the same things Jesus said. It's like, well, one group just latches onto one thing Jesus said, which, hey, guess what? Wealth is a blessing. The number one category in all the Bible related to wealth is a category that I made up these categories, okay? But treasure, I call it treasures temporal. I mean, and look, whether people love God or hate God, everything you've got, it came from Him.
Yeah.
Okay? And so wealth really is a blessing. I find no place where God says, hey, I'm going to curse you by making you so wealthy. Sometimes He does curse you with poverty, by the way. Now, that said, the number two category in the entire Bible of just number of passages, when I say category, number of passages on the topic is that wealth, deceitfulness related to it, or greed.
Yeah.
And even though wealth is a blessing, it has this huge power to deceive us. We set our hearts on it instead of Him. So at the end of the day, it really gets down to who's your master. And money's going to master us if we either love it or fear it.
Yeah.
Okay, our love and our fear need to be reserved for God alone. Yeah. That's kind of practical. His advice is so practical. I mean, he says do something. So diligence versus sloth. So get out of bed in the morning. It's going to work out for you.
Yeah.
Okay. But right. Righteousness versus wickedness. Do it right instead of cheating somebody. So when we see a passage in the Bible like Jesus, that parable of the talents, right, where one person does good stuff with it and gets a whole bunch more, and then somebody else, Jesus calls him out for being a fool, for bearing it. Well, Jesus hasn't gone off the reservation when he says that. He's just quoting Proverbs. He calls that servant a wicked, lazy servant. Those are the two biggest themes in all the wisdom literature. Yeah. Okay, so don't lose that stuff. God's got your back, but He still says get up in the morning and go do something right. Okay, yeah. So those are some practical things.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because so many people, I think, take it out of context. It's not necessarily that money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. So we got to make sure, especially as followers of Christ, that our hearts are in the right place. And I think money is a gift. It provides for our families. It takes care of our families. But if you're a master and a slave to that as opposed to Christ, that's where our motives are unfortunately a little off kilter.
Yeah, it can be really dangerous. And yeah, it really is. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And so again, our love belongs for God alone. Our fear belongs to God alone, because money owns you either way, right?
Yeah.
Some people are kind of greedy and they say, hey, if I had enough money, hey, God, give me $1 million, I can take it from here. Right? So that greed side. Some people say, hey, I'm not greedy, and still money can come in the back door and say, I own you. You couldn't make it home today without me. You couldn't fill your tank. You couldn't buy your coffee. And God says, no, there's one right master. It's me. And yeah, maybe God provides money to get you through, but it's God who we should love, God who we should fear. He's got our back. Yeah. Our money doesn't have our back. He does.
Amen to that. What's the biggest? John Thornton is with us. He's a CPA and author of the book Jesus Terrible Financial Advice. You can get it in stores and wherever you might buy books. For what's the one? You cover a lot of different topics in the book. It's a great read. What is the one biggest for people who are listening or watching? What's one of the one biggest pieces of advice you would give somebody who are looking to restructure their finances, get their house in order, bring it in line with what Christ has ordained for their house? What's the one biggest piece of advice you can give for those folks who are looking to kind of reorganize a little bit?
Okay, yeah. So I'd really go with two groups. There's those people, pastors, when I talk to them, they say they got two groups of people. One group of people saying, hey, how do I get enough to make ends meet? Okay? And the other group of people say, hey, I've got enough. What do I do with it now? Okay? So to those people who can't figure it out and just like say, hey, it's not working, maybe you tried, I don't know, something like a Ramsey or whatever, to kind of get out of debt. I don't know. Our peace doesn't come through our finances. Jesus
Amen.
promises peace that passes understanding, okay?
Amen.
So you can have peace right now today. Has nothing to do with your wallet.
Yep.
Peace comes from God, okay? So if it feels like money owns you, look, your debt can force you to maybe when you got to get up in the morning, when you're going to work, where you're going to work, okay? But it can never force who you're working for. You're working for God,
Amen.
okay? So be at peace with that. And look, some of you are like an alcoholic. Okay, you may never get out of it. You can still have peace in God. He's still got your back. Okay, you may not get out of debt until you go to heaven. Okay, you can still have peace. But that flip side is the people who are fabulously wealthy. Okay, from a world's perspective, I got to say that you're not really very wealthy. I can tell you one penny at regular market rate of return in 315 years you'll pass Bill Gates. Okay, that's fabulous rate of return, okay? But what that tells you is anything invested for eternity, even a penny, is worth more than everything here. Okay, so if you want to get rich right, understand it's got to be beyond yourself and beyond this world. Okay, and that's where generosity comes in, okay? Because that's how you get kind of beyond yourself. That's how Jesus tells us, waste the stuff here that you can't keep, but the stuff you can't lose. And so it's kind of two different groups, and I'd say, that's I think the things that I think each of those groups really needs to hear. And I've been in both those groups. I've been the really poor end, with the college student kind of kid, and now, relatively speaking, things are going pretty well. I wear one pair of pants at a time. Whether I was poor or kind of rich, I can eat 3 meals a day without getting fat. Even then, I'm probably pushing it. Okay, so look, if your life's not going to change, your contentment comes from God.
And it's just keeping things in perspective, and I love those nuggets of truth there. And I love the saying, well, you didn't bring it in with you, and you can't take it out with you. I mean, you got to keep things all in a broad perspective. And you mentioned generosity a minute ago. Talk a little bit about, and you mentioned it as well in the book, the tithing principle for those who are new to it, for those that may not understand the fullness of it. Just the investing in your local church, investing in your community. How does tithing play an important role as part of getting our household finances in order?
Yeah, so, tithing is kind of a funny thing. I hear people all the time ask me, hey, is tithing, is that like an Old Testament thing? Well, if you're not from a Christian perspective, or if you're kind of new to it, tithing is just a tenth. Okay, I think Jesus chose a tithe, or God chose a tithe because the math's easy. Maybe you can figure out what 1/10 of $10 is, right? Or 1/10 of $100, I guess it's $10, right? But the tithing's way before the law. The very first tithe, Abraham, he gives a tenth of all he has to this high priest named Melchizedek. Just kind of runs into, and it's just, hey, praise God for and this Melchizedek blessed him, and he said, hey, here's just a tenth. It's just this happy, joyous gift. Okay, but So sometimes people ask me, should I still tithe? Because they're cheapskates. They don't really believe God's going to take care of them, and they just don't want to go there. And look, that's one of the few places that God actually in the Bible tells us to test him on it. He says, test me on this. He says in Malachi, he says, you're robbing me. And people say, hey, how are we robbing you? He says, bring the whole tithe, whole tenth in, and see if I don't, overwhelm you with blessing. Okay, so a lot of times God says, don't test him. This is a place he does say, test me. Okay, but the other thing is, truthfully, Jesus says, tenth isn't it. He wants it all.
Yeah, yeah.
He wants our entire lives. And even Christians, we say, hey, Jesus, you're asking too much. Jesus says, if you want to follow me, take up your cross and get in line. Okay? And he says, consider the cost. And it does cost you everything. But that's where we get messed up too, because look, Jesus says it does cost you everything, but I'm worth it. Here's a basic business blunder. Okay, there's only a few truths in business, and one of them is what I call the profit principle. Revenue minus cost equals profit. And when we look at Jesus and said, Jesus, you're asking for too much, you're making the basic business blunder. You're looking at just the cost. You got to look at the revenue also. And Jesus says, follow me because I'm worth it. Okay? And Jesus didn't go to the cross to prove he's the bigger man. It says he went to the cross in Hebrews for the joy set before him. He endured the cross, scorning its shame, so they could be seated at the right hand of his Father. He knew the journey was worth it. So yeah, he asked for our entire lives, but he says, the life I'm going to take from you is nothing compared to the life I'm going to give you. So if you want to profit, don't just think about the cost, think about the revenue also. Yeah.
Good stuff from John Thornton here joining us. He's a CPA, went to WSU, go Cougars, also with Azusa Pacific now, also go Cougars, and also the author of the book, Jesus, Terrible Financial Advice. What sort of stuff did you learn along the way writing this book? And was it everything that you thought it would be setting out writing this thing? What sort of fun was it along the way?
Look, nobody wants to write a book. They want to have written a book. Okay. That's a very big difference. I mean, writing is a whole lot of work. I figure I publish about 9 words a day. That's how slow I am. But, along the way, this book took me like 17 years. And I obviously was doing a lot of the things along the way, but these are just life lessons. I stopped writing the book because well, geez, I'm not doing that. So either I'm a hypocrite. I can't write a book on your perspective I'm not going to give to the people who ask me. Or here's one, Jesus ruined my retirement a few years ago because things worked out well. I can retire now. Lucky me, we're cheapskates. We had to live off not much. And Jesus talks about this guy who has a big crop, a farmer, and he's going to tear down his barns, build bigger ones, and spend the rest of his life doing nothing. That's the Israelite version of the American dream. He just pulled it off, and Jesus calls the guy a fool. And I'm thinking, how's that a fool? He's not like the prodigal son who is wasting his life and doing nothing and doing it in a non-righteous manner. This guy's a farmer. That's hard work, right? And it doesn't say he cheated anybody, but the reason this guy's a fool is he wants to waste the second half of his life instead of the prodigal son who wastes the first half. And Jesus says, look, I gave you life to live it. If you want to be great in the kingdom, learn to be the servant of all. And so God doesn't give you a lot to spend the rest of your life doing nothing. If he gives you a lot, he puts you in a position to do something with it, to live. Okay? Yeah. So if he has blessed you, Jesus says, to whom much has been given, much is expected. So go do something with it. Okay? And if you don't have anything, you still got something. Okay? Christians, every Christian can give the thing that's been given most, which is forgiveness.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is giving. When you're releasing this rightful claim, something you're owed, hey, look, we have been forgiven more than we could ever forgive. And so start with that. Be trustworthy with a little bit. Worry later about being trustworthy with much. Yeah.
Great stuff from John Thornton. I love that because that's what we tell people all the time in our church too, as far as if you don't have the money right now to give, invest, just grace, forgiveness, time. There's always something that God's given us that we could be giving to others and to donate our service. And it's just great to keep just the bigger things in perspective. And we translate that to what's going on in the world and the world economy now. It's very important that Christians definitely keep things in the bigger perspective, the bigger picture about why we are put here to do what we do. And what is, looking back from a CPA perspective, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that you see in the way as far as that country's health and the prosperity of the economy just as a country overall?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, God tells us back in the book of Jeremiah that he delights in kindness, justice, and righteousness. Yeah. I think a lot of us come to Jesus because he's kind to us. He loves us. We're looking for a little mercy, a little grace. And probably all of us come there starting there, but a lot of people come to God looking for justice. That's a big issue these days. People say, hey, life isn't fair. to the U.S. or to any other country, to anybody at any point in time, God's ways work. Okay, so if I could drive anything home, it's like, hey, believe him, it's going to work out. Okay, his ways are righteous. Yeah, so that, and right now, we're about two generations, generation and a half into the postmodern world, which says, you got your thing, I got mine, mine's good for me, yours is good for you. Not true. Okay, there's one right way. Okay, now I'm talking very broad, okay, but there's one way to God, and that's through Jesus. Okay, and his ways do work. In this postmodern world, here's our apologetic. We just hold up Jesus. Okay, and I don't have to argue with anybody about their thing. I just hold up Jesus and say, hey, Jesus is the way. Jesus says, when I'm lifted up, referring to being crucified, all people are going to be drawn to him. And we don't have to argue with anything about their way. It's true. I don't know what somebody else's experience is. But if Jesus is true, if I just hold up Jesus, they can go home and compare their thing to Jesus and realize, you know what, my thing is nothing compared to his thing.
Over the years and all the teaching and all the studies and all that, do you have a particular favorite verse, a Bible verse, when it comes to finances that you might tend to lean on? Do you have a particular favorite of yours?
You know, I've got a kind of a life verse. In fact, a few weeks ago, I might put it out there on my website, gettingrichright.com. I spoke to a group of students at APU, and I called it Finding Jesus in a Law Land. You know, there's a great movie that just came out, you know, it was up for some Oscars, won it, and lost it. But anyway, but here's a couple people chasing their purpose, you know, and what they give up along the way. Well, this verse that I love, it's kind of a life verse from a long time ago, is, and Paul says, and this is my prayer, that we might grasp how long and wide and high and deep is the love of Christ. And this love that surpasses knowledge. And then it goes on to say that we might be filled to measure of all the fullness of God. And then right after that it says, he does immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. I'm looking at that saying, wow, I mean, I want to know that love. I want to know what that is. And that's a money verse as much as it is any other part of a life verse. Because, look, some things money can't buy, like purpose, okay, like eternal life. But for everything else in life, there's money. Okay, in other words, you know, it just runs into us daily, just constantly. So don't forget the love of God, okay? Amen. Don't forget your purpose in him. You know, and from there, you know, there's investing verses, there's stewardship verses, there's giving verses, there's all these other things, but get your purpose right. Find it in him, and after that, you know, he'll take care of the rest.
Great stuff from John Thornton. He's a CPA, author of the book, Jesus, Terrible Financial Advice. For those that want to find out more about you, connect up with you, and more about those principles that I think are so very well needed right now. Of course, there is the word, but tell us about your website and where they can get your book and things of that nature. They want to find out more about the principles you've outlined.
Yeah, I've got a few things like a TED Talk and different things linked into a website called gettingrichright.com. It's all one word, gettingrichright.com. Another little play on words because it's tying in God's righteousness to riches and also even understanding what rich means. Because look, if you think you're wealthy, if it isn't beyond this world and beyond yourself, you're a pauper. You know, you will die, you will not take it with you. Okay, so there's some resources out there whether you have budgeting problems, you can do easy things, or if you just want to think about bigger picture things like where's God calling you to invest in his kingdom, you know, and how to do that. Really not where, I guess, but more of how to. There's some resources out there. Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much. I love the play on words. It's so creative. I love it. Thank you for helping believers in Christ just remind people of just the proper perspective that we need to have in our finances and just keep our hearts in check and our motives in check and realize why God's put us here, that we do have worth and that we're not a slave to money, but there is hope, and there is just an incredible love and grace that rests in him. And so thank you for reminding our viewers of that and helping to keep those principles and those perspectives in line, and for helping us to continue to line up with his, because that's where the ultimate blessing will occur. And thank you for taking a few minutes to share some of your stories from your book and some of your experiences and all that with our viewers here today.
Hey, Joe, thank you so much, too, and God bless you at what you're doing there, and go to Black Lake and Lacey, and even I say go Husky. They hate to say it. Did start out in my married life in Husky housing. Okay.
There you go.
My wife was a dog, so cats, dogs, you're all good. But anyway, a pleasure talking with you, Joe. Take care.
I'm all the same way. Huskies and Cougars. I root for Washington State teams out here. I was born and raised my whole life out here too. I know exactly what you mean there. And I find it even more great that you don't escape the Cougars as well, being from Azusa Pacific and they're the Cougars. I think that's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, very cool.
John Thornton with us. He is a CPA. GettingRichRight.com is a website. Jesus Terrible Financial Advice. Go check out the book. It is a wonderful read. Has a lot of great nuggets of truth and advice in there as well. Check that out. Thank you for watching another award-winning edition of Christian Media Spotlight, a winner of the 2016 Best of the Northwest Awards for the category for religious and inspirational. Thank you to all for watching and for your support. And we got more when we come back. Take a look at this promo, this preview for Creation Festivals coming up this July, which we will be at once again. And we'll be back to tell you what's up next. On our next edition of Christian Music Spotlight, we'll have singer-songwriter Tammy Trent with us on the program. We'll tell you more about that when we come back on CMS TV. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Pastor Harry.
And I'm Bill Darpino, and we are so excited to be able to invite you to Creation Northwest 2017. This year is our 20th anniversary, and we are so excited to be able to do something really special. This year we're going to have championship bull riding.
Woo! That's going to be fun.
Yes. What does someone need to do to find out about it?
Well, basically go to the Creation Fest Northwest website, and you can get all the information right there, and it's open to the entire community. So it's going to be a fantastic time as we all get together and have championship bull riding.
That's right. It's going to be a lot of fun. All you need to do is go to creationfest.com, click on Northwest. We have all the information there for you. Stop out, see us. It's going to be a fun time. It'll be the highlight of your summer, maybe your life.
Amen.
And that was an early look at Creation Festival Northwest 2017. It is fast upon us, coming up this year, July 13th to the 15th, as it returns to the Benton County Fairgrounds in Kennewick, Washington, and the Tri-Cities. For more information on that, go to creationfest.com and click on Northwest to view the lineups and more. And for the 9th year, CMS TV will be on site for this year's Creation Fest Northwest. We look forward to seeing everyone out there. That is all the time we have for this edition of CMS TV. Make sure you join us on the next Christian Media Spotlight. We'll have Matt McKee, author of The Parent Chat, telling us how we can keep our kids and our families safe in this technologically changing world we live in. Matt McKee joins us via Google Hangout on the next Christian Media Spotlight. Thanks so much to John Thornton for joining us. WSU Coug and CPA, author of Jesus Terrible financial advice. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to John Thornton via Skype, and thank you, and we'll see you back here next time for more of the stories and testimonies behind your favorite artists in Christian entertainment on CMS TV. See you later, everybody. Have a great one.